I'm driving down 55th and I see a scooter sitting in the grass, like, who does that, man?
That was Uber coming home.
But again, I think that's a private enterprise, so I can't really talk about that. But I do know that your state dollars have been diverted when it comes to infrastructure. I also know that we've had 3 governors, starting with our Democratic governor, former Democratic governor, Jay Nixon, followed up by our aggressive, how do I want to say this? Followed up by our, I'm on the radio, and
Politically,
now I gotta watch my words. Followed by our questionable governor. I want to say another word, but I'm not sure if I can get away with it on the radio. But questioned by a governor that almost was at the level of a rapist. If not, if he hasn't passed. Yeah, former Governor Greitens, he did nothing about it. Governor Nixon did nothing about it. And now our new Governor Parsons, he's not touching the issue either. We're trying to bypass what's politically unappealing. And I say it's politically unappealing because a lot of the folks that I work with, they get various donations from large corporations that benefit off of tax dollars, tax allocations, right? Tax credits, tax incentives. So it's not attractive to say, hey, we're not going to give you no money because we're going to actually use this on the citizens that live here, that work here, that the government is dependent on their tax dollars, and we have a social contract with them to do something. It's not really appealing for folks in office to do that.
I know you've kind of hit all the issues on there, but
almost.
You always leave that library one. You always leave that library one out. You know, I'm a little partial with that library. So
now let's go ahead and get into it because it's funny you said that. The library tax, all the money library tax will all the money go to it. Well, yeah, they missed it too. I don't know. What do you know about the library tax, Charles?
I don't know. I hope it all goes to it because I actually think, well, I can speak for the one library right here in our area that I constantly utilize it from social perspective, business-wise. I hope it all goes there. I don't know. I don't know all the language that's in that ballot right there pertaining to the library. I haven't really read it in depth and educated myself on it, but it's something I think we actually need to look at. When it comes to taxes, any form of taxes, you know, the hair raises up on our neck.
Oh yeah.
Just with that little 3-letter word. If it all is actually going to that entity, I think it's a great idea. Seriously.
And see, I'm in my impressions today, so I have to do my George W. Bush. No taxes. So when it comes to taxes, I have to I have to align myself with the cats that I work with that consider themselves libertarians.
Okay.
Right. So when it comes to the library, I think we do need to ensure that the library is getting the type of funding that it needs.
Okay.
But that goes back to, again, us being engaged in suppression, right? And the reason I say it goes back to us being engaged in suppression, if you live on the east side of Kansas City, you pay tax dollars. The city has a mechanism called TIF, which is tax increment finance. So if you live on the east side of Kansas City, a lot of your tax dollars has been diverted in TIF projects that you probably would never go to, right? Because there's no
That's true.
transit infrastructure to get there unless you have a car that you can drive, right? So if you're taking TIF dollars, which is tax increment finance, and you're using this for projects, what does TIF dollars do to the library? Well, TIF dollars affects the library and the school district.
That's true.
Because you're talking about your local taxation that would be messed that word up. Thank you. Okay. Killed that word. That would just go like along with. Yeah, I killed that word. They're like the cab. I blame that on public schools, right? And the tips that they use that would have gave me a proper English course. If you listen to What's Real Talk, KUAW, the calling number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to this or watching this on my Facebook page feed, know you can go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 page and you will have an integrated video and audio experience. Now so back to my...
Now that was a public school voice.
That was a public school voice.
Grammar and everything.
Graduated from himself.
Mighty proud.
And I got a little parochial in me too, man. I went to Bishop Hogan. So all my Hoganites out there. But going back to the taxation of the tips. All right, so if we wasn't depleting our local tax dollars using tip projects that are outside of the inner city, we wouldn't be depleting school district dollars.
Right.
And library dollars. And there's certain ways that we can do TIFs where they don't do it. So from a state level, this is a self-plug. So from a state level, I've been working on legislation that will require all TIF projects in the state of Missouri to be voted on, right? Now, one of the issues with this bill was some of my Republican colleagues, not the ideal of requiring taxation, a vote on TIF projects. It was the fact that I was doing it for the entire state. So they came to and they was like, hey, Ellington, we got issues with TIFs and we got issues with the way cities use TIFs, etc. But, you know, this is going to hurt us in some of the rural areas because of the population, demographics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, hey, man, I ain't got no problem in it. So I think we will be seeing some drastic legislation at the state level. Senator Koenig filed something a year ago when he was in the House before he became a senator. I was a co-sponsor on that bill. We actually passed that deal with the eastern part of the state out there by certain areas in the county of St. Louis. But we need to do something for the city of Kansas City and St. Louis. And I think if we do something of that nature, we don't have to raise taxes for library levies, etc., because we're no longer using our local taxation incentives to deplete the areas. And it's ways that the city can actually codify inside of ordinances and different things when it comes to new bills, et cetera, that certain dollars is donated that doesn't cost the taxpayers more money. And, you know, and if we can get to that point if we stop suppressing ourselves by not voting for people that are going to be beneficial to us and not themselves.
Okay.
And again, you listen to What's Real Talk. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're watching this on my Facebook page, you can always go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 and you can get an integrated feed. You got anything else you want to hit on the fuel tax before I move on?
No, you can keep going. You keep going. The road that I traveled was pretty smooth today, coming down the road.
I would ask himself, didn't that man in the KC jersey manage at Gates?
Gates what? Speaking of Gates Barbecue?
Yeah, Gates. I guess I'm pretty sure
that's Kansas City's own, man. That's some of the best barbecue in town.
Did he owe you some money from there?
No, he didn't owe me any money.
No, I'm reading the question. I'm just trying to make sure. They was like, didn't that man in the KC jersey manage at Gates?
Yes.
So somebody on here is seeing you and they know you.
Yes. Yes, that man did. Yes, that man did. It was my platform, my stepping stone to get to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Nah, plug for Gates. I like Gates too, man. He hires folks in the community that people wouldn't necessarily hire.
Yes.
Even though I haven't got them out to my job fair.
They were there in spirit.
Now that was a shout out to George. I had to do it. I hope he sees it. I had to do it. Or if Colin's watching, I hope he sees it. You know, I've been waiting on you. All right, so the fuel tax. I'm on the fuel tax. Not that we don't need the money for the fuel tax. I just again think it's an extra burden. The library tax, personally, I'm gonna know on it. Not saying that the library doesn't need money. I just think the city has been doing a horrible job of depleting local school district dollars and library funds. And then they always go back to the voter. TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas. This is 100% true. The problem with that understanding is the understanding of blight, though. So the legal definition of blight is undeveloped. Right, so anything that is underdeveloped can be considered blighted. So that means if you don't have, you got a couple hundred acres of land, that's blighted. Nothing's there. It needs to be built. So when we look at the language that TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas, that's 100% true. And we typically think of blight as the dilapidated buildings, these houses that need to be fixed, these trashy buildings that's half hanging, and that is blight. But blight is also undeveloped areas. So this is how TIFs have been able to been utilized outside of areas that would make it beneficial to creating economic density.
Off a broad word.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And that's a good and a bad thing. Right. It's a good and a bad thing. And I'm saying this and going right to the question. It's a good and a bad thing because going back to that bill I was talking about, the one that I'm trying to require all TIF projects to be voted on, I was working on amending the definitions of blight. Because that becomes hard and dangerous, right? So if I change the definition to only say that it can be in certain zones, then that knocks out developing in other areas that could be beneficial, right? To creating connectors in local cities. Okay. So if I use Kansas City as an example, we can actually create connectors in between Northland and south of the river, if we choose to. Or we cannot. We can continue to do what we're doing. So again, you're 100% right about the definition that blight is supposed to be, TIF is supposed to be used for blighted areas. The problem is the definition of blight. Definition of blight. But some of these things you don't want to tie down into a singular definition because then it alters who can utilize the law. I think it would be more cautious or better for people if we actually had a process in which voters had to say in which projects was actually going to be approved. Example, Power and Light. That's a TIF project. It's a TIF project that's losing money.
Yes.
Right? Personally, I don't go to the Power and Light.
Not only that, Zona Rosa.
Yeah, no, Zona Rosa too.
Right now.
Zona Rosa too. Yes. Now, Zona Rosa isn't losing the city as much money as Power and Light. And that's why I didn't use on it, but you're right. But I'm going to stick on Power and Light real quick to prove it. Oh, no. We have Tyrone Gathers in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. And the camera just happened to be that way. And I hope you pay for those hot chips, brother. I hope.
We just had a phone call from Lachelle Shelton, and she says, thank you. Y'all doing a good job. Everything is informative, the voting, and she just loves what y'all doing here on the show.
Now,
we appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Now, thank you. I don't know if people were seeing, but we're trying to reformat it a little bit, make it a little more informal, but as
informative as well.
Yeah, as informative and a little bit funner. Have a little bit of fun with as we're doing it. So I definitely appreciate that. I definitely appreciate it because you never know who's watching, who's listening. And again, you watching What's Real Talk, KUAW 98.5. The call-in number, as always, is area code 816-599-6893. If you're watching this on my Facebook page, you can always go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 page. You have an integrated video and audio experience, and you can see my brother Tyrone Gathers stuff in his mouth in the corner. Without just, I don't mess with you, man. Every time you step in, if you don't vote, you are pushing their agenda. Hey, that's 100% right.
I like that.
And that's a message that I wish more people would get. Hey, folks sit at home and they say.
But the one above that is even better.
Which one?
They're not selected. They elected.
Both of these is valid, right? So when you talk about they are selected and not elected, yes, we have political regimes.
Yes.
Now to tie this into what we're talking about. Okay. So Amendment 1, where did that come from? Because remember, we just said selected, not elected. Right. So where did Amendment 1 come from? Did Amendment 1 come from a desire of Missourians, whether that's the rural community or the inner city communities or the suburban communities? Did they come together and say, hey, redistricting process isn't right. We need to change our redistricting process because we're not getting the type of congressional people, we're not getting the type of representatives that's actually representing our area. Now, if they didn't, and I'm pretty sure they didn't, because I haven't been in any community so far that they was like, hey, we came up with this idea. I haven't talked to anybody from the rural area that's like, you know what, Brandon, we really hate the redistricting aspect and we need to change this.
Right.
Well, who did it come from? It came from those that seek to control elections and make money, right? Because the only benefit of having an equal partisan district is to increase the type of political dogma around elections, to increase
what was that word?
Dogma. Around elections, right? Which goes back to the selector. Let's look at our average elected official. So again, harping on our Senator Claire McCaskill. And full disclosure, and I know I shouldn't tell people this, but I'm probably not going to vote for either one of the senators because I don't believe in voting for the lesser of good evil. That's just dumb to me, right? If I got two bad choices, I'd rather leave both of them on the table. Why do I want to put
either one?
I don't want neither one. You give me 2 dirty cups, I'm just gonna sit there and not drink. I don't need to drink out of a dirty glass because I only have 2 glasses to drink out of. No, I'm gonna wait.
That's true.
Or I'm gonna find me another glass of water to drink out of. I'm gonna find me something that's not gonna be harmful to
because both of those are harmful.
Depending on your perception, right? My perception of harm is when I have somebody that's supposed to represent me that I can't talk to. Then you can't represent me, right? So if you are 100% against me, and I know you're 100% against me, using Josh Hawley as an example, I know he's a Republican that's not going to vote 90% for anything that I want, right? I know this.
Right.
I know this.
Right.
But the other person ain't showing me nothing either.
That's true.
So I lose nothing.
Right,
you not rocking with me, you not rocking with me. So I might as well find somebody who's going to rock with me. And this is what we've been seeing in this senatorial election. We've been seeing in the senatorial election a whole bunch of outreach to a so-called minority community that's not engaged in this process. And they're not engaged in this process because we're stupid. We're not engaged in this process because we don't want overt change. We're not engaged in this process because we don't believe in it. And we don't believe in it because of the type of people that have been selected and not elected.
Yeah,
right? But then that goes back to us too, because we can't have it both ways. We can't sit here and say that I'm not part of democracy, but then I'm controlled by all the rules of democracy. And the rules of engagement is voting and then participation.
Participation, yeah.
So without that, you're subject to being a colonized citizen. And you deserve to be a colonized citizen because the rules of America is ownership. I don't care if you're a marginalized citizen or not. I don't care if you like me because I'm black or you hate me because I'm black. That don't mean nothing. Because see, if I own my house, yeah, and Missouri's a stand your ground territory.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it is. So that means my property is my property. You don't have to like me for me to enjoy the pursuit of happiness. I just need to understand what that pursuit of happiness is and how to actually obtain that. Right, and we obtain that by controlling our institutions, controlling our economic destiny, controlling our political ideology, controlling our culturalistic marker. And a lot of this falls out from voting or the suppression of voting. And we're seeing continuous efforts by the Republican Party, whether that's voter ID. Now we have this Clean Missouri that's coming out, and this is not the Republicans behind this. Right. Because surprisingly, a lot of Republicans I know is opposed to it, and a lot of Democrats is for it. I'm like, why? Why are we supporting something that does nothing but repackage clothes that I already have and then drastically changes my contract with my mortgage? You want to change the whole way that I pay my mortgage. And everything else I already have. I already have windows. Let me see if I missed some of the governor's race. Yes, and I talked about that a little bit at the beginning with the voter suppression. Down there, we're seeing the reinvention of overt Jim Crow laws, and they're not even hiding it. They're not even ashamed about it, right? With the voter ID laws, we're seeing concealing of Jim Crow laws. We've seen the concealing of creating poll taxes again. And I say creating poll taxes with the voter ID because if I have to pay for a state ID, that's a fee. Then that changes my my right. I mean, that changes my privilege to a right, right? Because I have the privilege to vote underneath the Constitution. I have the right to get a state ID. That's a difference, right? One's a privilege, one's a right. When I go to the DMV and I pay for my driver's license, I just paid a fee to vote. That's called a poll tax by definition. Now, the suppression that we're seeing in Georgia, that we're seeing with her is it's off the chain. like they purging people off the road. What was it, 50,000 people that they hit? Something like that?
It's roughly that, if not more.
And it's not even ashamed of it.
No.
Like, hey, man,
made it clear.
You can keep Oprah because we're not going to let these folks vote. Which I find eye-opening. And I say it's eye-opening because I study a lot of history. And I used to wonder how people can sit there and people can get set on fire and folks can get hung.
And don't nobody else do nothing.
Don't nobody do nothing. Right. Well, I get it because I'm watching it today. Right. I'm watching people sit at home and say that, politics is what it is. well, you ain't voting.
Yeah, it's just
and we're getting laws that are changing. I'm watching laws that people thought ignorantly, and I say this being facetious and being cynical. I watched laws that people thought ignorantly was permanent. No, politics is transitional, right? Okay. So when we passed the Voting Rights Act in '65, people said at home, "Oh man, we can vote now." Well, look at today. Now they're saying you have to have voting IDs. You have to be able to count the beans again, right? We got black people running for office, and we're saying that they shouldn't be allowed to run because they're monkeys and this, and that. And this is public commentary. We got a president that says whatever he wants to say, and then we justify it because people are making money, and those people are making money want to remain comfortable.
That's true.
And the other folks that feel like we're disconnected goes back to understanding the rules of engagement. We're only disconnected if we give away our power. We're only disconnected if I let somebody else get in that car and drive. I'm gonna grab the steering wheel. We ain't going nowhere.
I'm grabbing something.
We're going in circles. Yeah. We never leaving Prospect. we not. I don't understand how the black people still want to be a part of a capitalist country. All right. Well, this is a deep one. I don't know if I got enough time to go all the way into detail. You listen to What's Real, Real Talk, KUAW. Call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to it on my Facebook page, you can go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5. But I want to get back to that though. I
think that'd be something we can hit on another day.
Hey,
because that's deep.
No, it is, and it's something I was sitting at home thinking about. Right. So I've been getting various calls this last week for potential placement in leadership, right, in the Democratic Party. So I'm talking to some of the folks, and I'm going in, and I'm thinking about people that I'm cool with, and I'm just kind of giving a complete oversight. And I started thinking about some of my libertarian friends. And with my libertarian friends, I was like, it's really not too much difference with government, except one doesn't trust government completely, and they want to get rid of government. I'm painting in the broad brush, right? Because not all libertarians is underneath the same broad brush, but they want to get rid of government completely. The other group doesn't trust government, but chooses to be dependent, which is dangerous, right? So I'm gonna hit you with what I mean. So a lot of my libertarian friends, they believe in homeschooling, right? When I was younger, I thought homeschool parents was crazy. Like, man, I go down to the community center, I see all these kids sitting in the circle, and you don't look like you should be teaching, just off of optics, right? But then I talk to folks from our community, and they always talk about, well, these schools is horrible. They don't teach us our education. My kids aren't getting the type of curriculum that I want them to get. Well, which one is better? Is it better for me to disengage with an entity that I believe is overtly harmful and then start creating my own entity, which actually goes back to the rules of engagement of America? Malcolm talked about something similar when he was talking about we shouldn't be fighting for reparations. We should be getting 25 states and calling it a day. Like, man, give us 25 states, leave us alone, right? Which goes back to the 40 acres and a mule, etc. So I definitely want to get deep into the conversation about the capitalistic country, and then I'll touch on some socialism. We may actually be able to do that next show, but it's a conversation that needs to come about. And the last thing I would like to say before we cut off, just because I went there, a few years ago, I started trying to create a coalition between the Rural Caucus, the Rural Conservative Caucus, and the Black Caucus, because I've seen a lot of similarities in issues. Not necessarily similarity in overt appreciation for the American institution, right? Because a lot of my libertarian friends, they staunch in the Constitution. The Constitution is the greatest thing in America. And I'll be like, hold on, bro.
So what was some similarities that you were seeing?
Oh, now when we talk about social conditions, poverty, law enforcement, overt government intrusion, right? So I use an example. I've been working on child support laws. Well, some of my colleagues on the other side, they got issues, but it's not the same as mine. But they got, it's government. Oh, hey, I got the same problem. Right? So when we talk about being politically savvy and linking and not being politically suppressed, we got to stop buying into the dogma of political partisanship and fictitious politicians. So again, I'm know on 1 through 7 the county questions. I'm no on Amendment 1 because it seeks to alter the redistricting process. I'm yes on Amendment 2, which is the medical marijuana, even though I don't support medical marijuana, because on the federal level they require you lose your rights to firearms, right? Number 3 is mute. It doesn't matter if you pass it and we pass number 1. Number 3 is irrelevant. The minimum wage I'm leaving up to people, but I'm cautioning folks to understand that if you pass a minimum wage, there's a certain thing called the cliff effect, and the cliff effect goes to folks that don't make or start to make more than whatever their social services they're cut off. And I know I'm talking fast because you've been listening to What's Real Talk. My station manager Terrence is wrapping me up, man. Thank you again. Check us out. We on the first and third Sundays every week. Every month, yeah. What I say every week? I did say every week.
We need another hour. We need another hour, man, because we were rolling there, man.